Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robin Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Joining us on episode 37 of the Women in Vinyl podcast. You just heard Acid Night Vision by the band Burning Sister off their latest album, Mile High, Downer Rock. You can check out the whole album and buy the record at burningsister.bandcamp.com. Today we're keeping it all in the family, the hashtag vinyl community family that is. We are giving an updated State of the Industry report brought to you directly from surveyed pressing plants, record labels, and collectors. The response was so overwhelming, we had to split it into two parts. In part one, the discussion is from the inside perspective, pressing plants and labels. But stay tuned for part two on what all you collectors had to say. We want to also mention, with episodes currently being one time a month, that we will be having a March Women's History Month Women in Vinyl Drive to raise funds for trade programs, scholarship opportunities, internships, and more. Please keep an eye out on social media or at womeninvinyl.com for more ways you can contribute to furthering the demystification, education, and diversification of the vinyl industry. Now let's get started. So, surveys.
I mean, the first time that we asked people to participate, it was lackluster. So my expectations were low. This, however,
this time I have literal tea and a shade button, so we're ready.
Yeah, like I want to say thank you and like, oh my God, you guys.
So much so that we will have to make this 2 episodes.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be definitely 2. Well, there might be enough for 3. Who knows? Yeah. I mean, we asked, you delivered. And now we're much like in podcasts where people tell stories from emails that were sent in. We're going to tell you your stuff just in a more condensed mathematical way.
And we can say that the majority of the different demographics that were asked these questions are all pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, which is really nice, actually, because, I mean, and maybe this is a hot take, but like maybe asking the people that are involved in doing thing and getting consistent answers would...
No, I felt a little less alone.
Would be a good thing instead of just like writing an article arbitrarily without doing any research. So,
oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
And we will definitely get into that.
We're going to get into that because it is 2023, y'all, and there's hot takes. There's still misinformation being pumped out into the ether, and it makes us collectively nuts. So, let's speak truth to power and let's get into it. So we're going to do a little updated state of the industry.
Yeah, I think last time was with Katy Clove.
We talked with Katy Clove, which we can reference for those of you that have questions or concerns about how release schedules are made, which seem to be a thing. And then we talked to the sweet, lovely, and tender Billy Fields.
Yes.
About sales and ramifications on the industry and how the industry is able to perform at its highest capacities and what we were currently experiencing when we talked to Billy too.
Yeah, because it looked like there was still some Taylor Swift rage in a few of these responses. So we'll definitely reference back so people could. Well, for anybody that missed it, we surveyed uh, record pressing plants, labels, and collectors. And we got some good responses back to each of those. And we wanted to give you an updated state of the industry from the people themselves versus
Yeah,
just us, even though we do it.
we do it.
So we had 14 record pressing plants respond in the US, Europe, UK, and Asia. 50% of those identified as 2 to 4 presses, so smaller. 36 were 5 to 9 presses, so medium. And 14% were 10 plus presses. So, yeah, the most comfortable run size, which I think is really interesting and something that will probably help with capacity issues and labels better identifying who they should be pressing with, is
Yeah.
run sizes. So, overall, 1 to 5,000 records was what the pressing plants said. Over half felt that that was a good run size. And then 200 to 1,000 pieces. And then 5,000 to 10,000. So, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting.
I mean, I feel like that's interesting and representative of kind of the changes that the industry is trying to make to combat backlog because, and you can speak to this from a gold rush perspective, like some plants, and I feel like this is through the the doldrums of vinyl in the early 2000s. All of these plants pivoted from large capacity to smaller capacities because people weren't making as many records. So they all had to gear to do smaller runs and offer smaller runs to be able to stay afloat.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and especially during the pandemic,
Yeah.
which is to give this update from, you know, people figured out who their client base was, or hopefully they did.
Yeah.
And so if you had 2 to 4 presses, then more than likely it's more comfortable to run something from 200 to 5,000 pieces versus like a 10,000 piece job, because that's
Right.
going to be your press capacity potentially for a week or two.
Totally. But, and as we like to discuss here on the podcast and in our regular lives, when you're changing from a job to another job, if there's a color change involved, that means you have to drain that entire hopper of whatever color to make sure that there's none in there, get it all out of the extruder, put a new color in. You need to change those stampers. Sometimes you need to sand the molds. Like you need to do all of this like maintenance stuff in between those things in order to set up for another job. So that's why a lot of plants have decided to go away from doing smaller runs, because the amount of downtime that they're experiencing in between those jobs is just not worth the time. Because newsflash, peeps, record pressing plants only get paid for pressing records. They don't get paid for the downtime in between, but their people sure do.
Yep.
So, and I mean, God forbid if you crack a stamper or something too. So, you put that stamper on and you press one and the stamper cracks. Guess what? You got to do it all again. But I mean, and you guys, you can speak to that from a goal rush perspective, Jen, because your guys' minimum is 200, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to mention because some of the questions that we asked were what their biggest pain points were and how they see supply chain having changed from the pandemic until now. And the response to that was that 70% feel that it's improving. So that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 7% said no, and then 23% said firmly yes. And so in looking at that in comparison to labels, it was a pretty even split. The labels were 33 and a third fittingly as to yes, no, and somewhat.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So like I feel like people kind of don't understand, and we've talked about this before, that one plant doesn't just get one job. Sometimes like the bigger jobs are sometimes spread out through different plants where labels have capacities and things like that. So it's not just that one plant is taking on the lion's share of pressing records, and that's why your favorite band can't get on there. but sometimes they're not, they want to press 100 records and that plant doesn't exist anymore. That space has been reallocated into a bigger run. So
Right.
then your favorite band / label has to find a plant that has the capacity to do what they want to do. So just because a record pressing plant exists doesn't mean that they're going to be able to take on the capacity that you want. And also B, it goes back to the hot take that I always have, is that now there's no bar that you have to meet to be able to press records. Anybody, any band can hire a mastering engineer or a record pressing plant and press their records.
Yep.
So like there's like the floodgates were open, and that's great, and it's awesome. And I mean, especially as a lathe cutter, I'm happy that, you know, people are able to make all the records that they want, and that there exists a space in order for me to make runs for people that are like, oh well, I think only 20 people will like my record, instead of them being like, oh well, the 100 is the minimum, I guess I need to do 100.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, much like any band that didn't make it, I'm glad that my band didn't actually get the chance to do records, because when we wanted to do records, the pressing minimum was 300, and I was like, nope. So we did CDs, and I still wound up with a huge ass box in my house.
Well, and that's probably one question that we should have asked was, you know, was that like what's your minimum versus comfortable run size? But hopefully when we go through these responses, people, even though it was completely anonymous, because we wanted the truth. And so, but hopefully there will be a label / pressing plant marriage where these people will ask the right kinds of questions to the plant to find the right spot for them.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the last few years with the pain of growth and capacity, that's kind of like those kind of conversations have really happened, so that you're able to glean where the best place is for you.
Yeah, they definitely should be.
Yeah.
So, as far as the labels, since we're going to tackle pressing plants and labels today, we had 21 labels fill out the survey from US, Canada, Europe, and UK. The average run size was 200 to 500 at 47%, 1,000 to 5,000 at 33%, 500 to 1,000, 10%, and over 5,000 is 5%. We did also have some lathe cuts or under 200, and that was 5% as well. And then important to note as well, the physical media per year releases. So I was actually kind of surprised, I guess, by this, that people do 38% were 10 plus releases, physical media per year. I thought that was kind of a lot personally, but 4 to 10 at 33%, and then 1 to 3 releases at 29%.
I think it's reflective of maybe the label size that we did get, and the label size that interacts with us as an entity anyway, because we are a little bit more aligned with the independent smaller labels. So it seems like those are a little bit more in line or inclined to do records or physical releases, because that seems to be kind of what their customer base wants, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So when we last reported on the state of the industry, we were seeing significant delays due to materials, from PVC to board stock and black paper. So an update on how those things are faring.
Oh, plastics.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to go back to your point before on stampers. One of the biggest things that people called out was the quality of their metal parts for their stampers.
Yeah.
And then the time to get them was also one of the things. So that was 40% of people surveyed.
I mean, and that is one of the choke points in record pressing, as we've always kind of identified. You've got our good friends Stamper Discs in the UK creating a giant capacity for themselves. But I mean, I don't know what it is about record pressing plants and things like that, but people think that you get a machine and it automatically goes online.
Right.
So obviously, stamper creation must be the same. You just make a little bubble bath for it to go in, and then everything's fine, right? So automatic capacity increasing is a thing, I'm sure. If anybody can't pick up on my sarcasm, it is completely opposite. Record pressing machines are known for having their own personalities and time for the operators to get used to them and learn how they're going to fit into their systems. And one record pressing machine might be less productive than another one. So you know that you don't put a 500 job on this machine, you only put a 200 job on this machine. So there's like little foibles in between all of those like capacity things too, but I'm sure that it would be the same with stamper creation.
Yeah.
Especially because you grow stampers molecule by molecule. I mean, it's fascinating, it's a beautiful process, and I would watch it all day, but it still doesn't, it's not an automatic thing. You can't
Exactly.
press a button and a stamper comes out. So the fact that stampers is still a thing means that yes, there's capacity that's being added, but that's not necessarily completely 100% online globally.
Yeah.
So that,
And I
I mean,
think,
that totally tracks.
right. And I think that, later on, one of the things that record labels were saying that they wish pressing plants did better was communication and sticking to dates that they're given as far as turn times. And I think it's important to mention here that a scratch stamper or any sort of issue with the stamper that causes you to need another one is going to set things back. So even though everybody has the best intentions of a turn time given, things as simple as a stamper arriving scratch, getting, scratched, broken, split collars, whatever, like if we can't use it anymore and we have to order another one, it's just the way that things are. You have to delay it.
Yes. And I mean, nothing can just stop and have that conversation all of the time either. Like that operator is searching for a new stamper to see if there's another stamper to be had. And then that goes up the chain to the next person, which might be the production manager. And then the production manager has to see how many sets of stampers were ordered and figure out if they have them. And then, then there's like multiple conversations that go on between that. And then they need to, maybe another lacquer needs to be cut. So, I mean, the conversation back to the label will happen, but there's, 7 that will happen before it once there is an issue with the stamper.
Right.
So, I mean, and if you guys have 4 presses at Gold Rush, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're having that conversation with 4 different operators, and then you as one production manager are then trying to find 4 different sets of stampers from 4 different labels, like those conversations, and I'm sure that you've had to do those things. So how long does that kind of process take to try and narrow down whether you have an extra set of stampers, and then let's say you don't, so then what is that process on your side?
Yeah, so I mean, first when we get it in, we inspect the stamper. If it's good to go, we start pressing it. If something happens and it breaks, then yeah, we need to see if we have another set. And some pressing plants, based on the size of the order, will order extra sets of stampers, but you can't do that on every run. So like if I had a 200-piece run, I wouldn't want to order another set of stampers, because then that's more that the customer's going to have to get charged, that the label's going to have to charge the consumer, which, as we've seen from this survey, is a huge issue price. So if that were to happen, then we need to ask the plating facility to make a new stamper. And that could take, a week, 2 weeks. We get that back in, inspect it again, put it back on press. So, all of that leads up to what is going to be pressed. And along with all of that, we have to factor in, when we're creating a pressing schedule, are labels baked? Do we have all of the parts? Because you can't just switch jobs out that easily if your labels aren't ready to go. And, another thing, right. And another thing is like how the stampers arrived. So, if there's an issue, we need to make sure, is it on the mother?
Yeah.
And that goes for test pressings too, because there might be something that doesn't sound, but it's a call out, or there's a pop or something that develops. And we have to then inspect the stampers, get the mother checked, potentially get a mother capture, and then figure out from there, how do we resolve the issue? So that can sometimes take a lot of investigation to figure out where the
Totally.
problem's happening. And no one wants it to be them, obviously.
Of course not.
So yeah, I mean that kind of thing can really delay a project.
Well, yeah, because when you get that stamper, let's say you get that replacement stamper back in, it's not like someone's running it into the pressing plant with Chariots of Fire playing, being like, "Oh, we've been holding this press naked, waiting for you. It's fine," and then you automatically start pressing that record again. That's not how it works.
Exactly.
The wheels must continue. So then another job goes on that has all the parts, and then you continue.
Yep.
So then, yeah, so then you have to have space and capacity that was allocated for different stuff, because yeah, you can't tell when a stamper's going to break. You can't tell when these fragile parts are going to malfunction.
Yeah, it's a big puzzle. I mean, I enjoy the puzzle, but it is definitely one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Another thing that people mentioned was about 30% said that print was an issue. Either that it was damaged in transit or overall, and that it was a major pain point as far as timing or other issues. So are you seeing that in your world as well?
Yeah, I've had to request secondary runs of jackets. I mean, one of my biggest complaints was I shipped like a final wrapped product, everything out, and I don't know what kind of things the shipping guys were doing with these records, but they must have dropped the box or something. And actually, I will say, from reading all of these responses, I've reconsidered how I ship and package records to be shipped. And usually I would put them inside a jacket, inside a poly bag, and then ship them. But I've had jackets split. The records are okay, but the jackets have split because of maybe falling from a high place, which like just terrifies me. But and then, so the records were all fine. Everything was all good once it got to the customer, except for the jacket. So then I had to get back in line with the jacket. And I mean, it's not the print guy's fault.
Right.
So then I have to pay for new jackets. The printer's got to find more space for me. And then he's got to ship them to me, and hopefully they make them to me. Okay. And then, and then on again. So yeah, I mean, generally, unless it's jackets, I do all of my printing as local as I can get it, so that I can, whether it's in-house, which is obviously like time consuming, but then I can guarantee that it's done and I have it and it's right. And it doesn't have to go anywhere. So then it doesn't have the chance to be damaged unless I decide to damage it myself, which has happened. But yeah, like my print has had some difficulties for sure. I mean, and so far as printing in house, like getting toner, making sure that there's toner available, which hasn't been the case in some cases, because my printer, I can't just go to Staples and get the toner. So I have to order it. And then, if the company doesn't have it, then I'm just like, well, guess we're not doing anything with yellow. That's cool. And yellow's not in anything, right? Right, Jen?
Never.
Graphic design wise, yellow's never in anything.
CM, not yellow K.
It's one of the optional ones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just like, and as far as that, and like, I'm not going to call my customer and be like, hey, there's no yellow toner, so I can't make your labels right now. Like, it's just like, I'm going to try and get yellow toner as quickly as possible and then get it done. So,
right.
But yeah, print for me has been not too bad. Black sleeves are not something that I usually offer anyway. They're a special order for me. So they were not available for like 6 months. And I was just like, well, nobody gets black sleeves. I don't really care. So
yeah, they're significantly more expensive.
Yeah, that just stopped being something that I offered.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then, so we have quality of metal parts, number 1, print, number 2, paper sleeves was one of them. And then we have machine parts, which very valid concern.
Yeah.
And I think that's happening just outside of the vinyl industry as well, just in general.
Yep. yeah, look at trying to buy a new car.
Yep. Yeah.
Can't buy a new car for like, a few months of lead time too.
Hmm.
Um, the circuit boards and chips and all kinds of stuff. So anything that is involved with circuit boards.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think like any engineers or technical people out there listening, like we need somebody to make new molds. We need someone to make new pressing parts, besides just the manufacturers of actual record presses, because there's definitely a market for it. People need them, and we can't get them. So if a machine's down, obviously that's significant capacity lost.
Absolutely.
So
Especially if you're in a smaller plant that has 3 or 4 machines.
yeah,
If one goes down, that's a quarter of your capacity.
exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, those parts are not that's very highly specialized machinery
Mm-hmm.
that, and also the machining of those parts. So it's not just any engineer that can just like, oh, hey, yeah, no problem, I can make it this. Like, it's very specialized.
Yeah.
So, they
'Cause
have
the
to
molds have
understand.
to the molds have to cycle the hot and
Yeah.
cold water. There's
Yeah,
copper
so they need
involved.
to
Like,
understand
yeah.
fluid dynamics, and they need to understand metallurgy and all of those complex things. And I think they're complex machines. Not everybody in the industry has the same one.
Right.
It's like there's, I don't know, 6 different kinds of record pressing machines. There's Virals, there's Hamiltons, there's, what do you guys have?
Well, there's Phoenix Alphas.
Phoenix Alphas, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's quite a few,
Yeah.
but
And those are just like the kind of like the current ones. There's still vintage ones too.
mm-hmm.
So
SMTs. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, and some plants have a blend. There's
Mm-hmm.
automatics, there's manuals, there's all these different kinds of machines too, and they all are very, very, very different from each other.
Yeah.
So getting parts for one is not going might not fit on your other one. You're getting a thing for a manual, it's not going to fit on an automatic because those are different machines.
Right.
So yeah,
And
I mean, that's a big part.
a huge part. Yeah. And then the last thing was good, reliable employees. And that's why we exist. We are trying to make that happen.
We are also good and reliable employees.
True. Very true. Yes. Later, when I saw about customer service from labels, I was offended because I feel like I provide very good customer service. So,
You do. You do. I can confirm. I can confirm. We're very
um,
great at all of the things that you do.
so press with me. Yay.
In
So turn
2025.
time. Yeah. uh no, well, so turn times, it's perfect segue.
Yeah.
So the majority of pressing plants right now said that they are taking about 6 months or less, which is fantastic news. While 36% said that they're still over 6 months. And labels actually backed that up, saying that 52.5% are staying right at or under that 6 months, and the remaining are over that 6 months, saying completely depends on the plant. We're experiencing new titles being under 6 months, but reorders or catalogs are taking forever. And then you collectors are saying that you're seeing this change as well. 41% saying they're getting records somewhat quicker. 28% saying yes, it's quicker, and 31% saying no. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to depend on what part of the world you're in. It's going to depend on what you're buying. I mean, yeah, back catalog might take a while because maybe it's being remastered. Maybe they don't have, new metal needs to be made. Like,
Mhm.
there's 100 different reasons why back catalog is not a thing.
Yeah. It might not even be a priority considering
Yeah,
new releases need to be done first or whatever. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like turn times are always kind of going to be arbitrary and a little bit like, if if you get this stuff when you planned it and nothing happens, then you're going to be happy.
Yep.
But if you get your stuff a little bit delayed, you're going to be miffed. Especially if maybe you missed the call from the CSR or something happened on the way to this shop. Like, who knows?
Yep.
And if you don't get it for however, like much time in the future, then of course you're going to be cheesed.
Right.
But I mean,
yeah. And I mean, I'll say for a new project, we're, within this range. So it is nice to see some light at the end of the tunnel, after what a lot of plants were, not able to take on new customers, or
really.
it was a year booked out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, people are making changes. Like plants are making changes. They're changing their minimums. They're changing suppliers. They're changing different things to be able to like chip away at those backlogs. But I mean, as long as we are still experiencing people wanting records, that's kind of going to happen.
Yep. Hold that thought. It's time for an Amanda fact.
Cover art for albums as we know it today has come a very long way. Records released in the early 1930s were actually referred to by some as tombstones. Ouch. They were either sold in plain bags or thick multi-78 disc collections that looked like photo albums, featured somber embossed titles, and looked just about as drab as you can possibly imagine. In 1938, Alex Steinweiss, while working with Columbia Records, developed the paperboard jacket that we know today. And he convinced Columbia Records to go with full-color modernist designs. His inspired idea has changed the very nature of record packaging forever. Alex is credited with developing the entire graphic language of album design. Photographers, artists, graphic designers, and even industrial designers continue to contribute, innovate, and push the boundaries of product imagery and design to this day. Thanks, Alex.
Are you a producer, engineer, or broadcaster? Do you want to be? Either way, Nugent Audio is for you. Nugent creates innovative, intuitive, professional audio tools for high-end music producers, post-production engineers, and broadcasters. Their products make it easier to deliver better quality, save time, and reduce cost. As a Women in Vinyl podcast listener, you get 20% off your next Nugent Audio purchase using code WOMENINVINYL. Go to nugentaudio.com/womeninvinyl. And now, back to the episode.
The next one is the one that really grinds my gears, because it's something that we all deal with in every single facet of all of our lives. But for some reason, the music business is the only business where people continue to undervalue and expect things for free.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me crazy that people are barking about prices of records when if you look at the price of a record in 1966 being $3, if you only look at inflation, that record is $32 or $33 right now.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. I mean, so like over half of the pressing plants said that they've had to raise their prices in the last 6 months, while
Absolutely.
the remainder left them the same.
Yeah.
So it's not going to go down, at least not yet. And yeah, I mean, the public obviously is seeing this passed down. About 94% said that yes, they've seen the price of price of records go up.
Guess what? So have bananas.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. Like your grocery bill, like, yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you want to compare any other thing in this world that you are trying to buy, why are you not incensed about all of these other things? But
I mean, what about a t-shirt?
Exactly.
$35 for a t-shirt now. I'm just like, excuse me? Like,
yeah,
ours are cheaper. Go buy ours, but
love yourself and Women in Vinyl from head to toe. And feel good about putting money in our pockets, also saving some on your own. This is a sponsored ad. But because we have continually undervalued music, Spotify, I'm looking directly at you. Apple Music, I'm looking directly at you.
Napster back in the day.
Napster, I mean, giving music away for free is the reason for this.
Mhm.
This misconception that people have a inherent God-given right to have music for free and or cheap is insulting at the base level.
Yeah.
The people that think that the music industry is the reason for all of these things, and that, yeah, I mean, the big labels, sure, they're making money, but they're not making a ton off of records because records cost money to make. I've been talking to mastering engineers that are like, I need to raise my prices a little bit because I have a family.
Yeah.
And they're getting pushback from bands that are like, oh, well, I can't afford your mastering rates now. So now they're going to get their stuff mastered through Lander, which again, that's not going to do a great job of mastering.
Well, for those that don't know, explain what that is.
So Lander is like the Spotify and or Napster of mastering, where you can upload your songs to get mastered by AI or unnamed
What is it?
human.
The Chat GPT version of?
Yeah, exactly. For mastering. So you pay like $6 to get your song mastered, but like not by a human. And so generally it's not going to be optimal. I mean, it might be decent for streaming perhaps, but mastering exists for a reason. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse. That's not a real horse because no animals were harmed in the filming and or recording of this podcast. But we all know how much I love and appreciate mastering, and how much we love and appreciate masterers on the podcast here and in general and in life. But you know, like, free music does not go all the way up the chain. Just because you're giving away at the consumption level doesn't mean that recording studio is charging any less. That doesn't mean that the mastering engineer deserves any less. Certainly not. The plating people still need to get paid.
Yeah.
Like all of these associated industries, they can't all take a hit just because you want a $20 record.
Right. And I think, you know, to that point, which is interesting, is over half of the people that took the collector survey said that the pricing is impacting their ability to buy records, understandably, if everything else in your life is also going up in price. However, 63% said that they are going to keep trying. And they said that they'll continue to buy records for the next 1 to 5 years because vinyl is forever.
Indeed it is. Vinyl is forever, not only because it is not biodegradable, but because and maybe, you know what, maybe you should just be more choosy with what you're spending your budget on.
And I was happy to see that a few people that filled out the collector survey did say that they, you know, wish they had more self-control, and that was part of the reason why maybe they were having a need to slow down, because they were just that sense of urgency because of how things have been over the past 2 years, like feeling like you have to buy it now or you can't get it again. But yeah, I think things are starting to change where it'll come back. You'll have a chance. So, and I think that, you know, interestingly, one of the biggest pain points overall for both pressing plants and for labels actually is the customer expectation, being pushy and rude and having unrealistic expectations.
Oh, I've got the perfect example for this from this week.
Yeah, I mean, like, not understanding the medium and then getting mad at the pressing plant or the label for that thing. That it's just not fair to do that. And I think like a little kindness can go a really long way to the people that are trying to help you make this thing, because we care about it truly as much as you do. And if the person that you're working with doesn't care about it as much as you do, you should find another place to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you email me off of a recommendation from somebody specifically asking for a short run, and then I respond to you saying, yeah, I just need some more information about your things, blah, blah, blah. And then you hit me back with, what are the prices for 1,000? And then I reply again saying, I think that you guys want a pressing plant. Just to reiterate, I'm a short run lathe cutter. I do these 1 by 1 in real time. And then I get fired back with, we're taking our business elsewhere, to which I was like, bye, Karen. And then I was like, you know what? This is an education moment. So I said, hi, just so you know, I'm a lathe cutter. I cut these one by one in real time. 1,000 LPs will take me over 750 hours of the same record in my ears. The labor cost will be commensurate. And then he replies with, good luck in your future endeavors. And I wanted to throw my phone across the street. I was so mad. I was like, I'm trying to help you
Right.
with the pressing plan. The next question would have been, do you need, like I said, I'm not sure if this is your first vinyl experience, but happy to give you a recommendation.
Sure.
Like, I literally did nothing wrong and I got the business FU. I was like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I'll have people will get quotes and then they'll like not know how much records cost because in looking at all of this in preparation, everybody's pricing for a similar package is about the same. No one's outrageously above or below anybody else. And I think it was like someone got a quote and they replied, "Are you effing kidding me? That much for a single black record?" And I was just like,
yeah, dude.
yeah, man. Like keep getting
That's what it
quotes.
costs.
That's how much it is. Well, some other things that pressing plants felt were their biggest pain points overall were tons of variants, which we talked about some. I think this is maybe starting to fade out. I feel like in some instances it's not, but in other areas, I feel like I'm not seeing it as much.
I will say one of my favorite artists just announced their new record, and there's, I think, 8 variants. And I was just like, come on, dude. Really?
It's
Really?
not necessary. Yeah.
No, it's really not. Like, and like 400 of this one, 8,000 of this one, like those numbers are so arbitrary depending on like where they're getting distributed from. And I think that might be one of the like consumer collector pain points as well. Cause it's just like, well, what if I really like that one? How am I going to get it? Why doesn't the label just have it? You know, like, and I mean, yeah, there's inconsistency in those variants too. It's like, oh, here's what it's going to look like on the internet. And then you get it and you're like, this isn't what it looks like at all. Wah.
Right. Which, coordinating with artists, getting all their shit together.
Yeah.
Amen.
Art. Art will be the reason that I close doors. I swear to God.
Yeah, art. Yeah. Or, you know, I'll have people get quotes, say they're ready to go, and then they're getting it mastered, getting it, you know, let me know what your plan is so that I can give you accurate turn time.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll break it down for you. I'll give you like, I need masters this date, I need art this date. And then that way you can work backwards.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Because by the time you're contacting the record pressing plant, like you should have all of your ducks in a carton ready to be shipped.
Because you can't come back 3, 4, 5 weeks later and be like, oh, well, you said March. Like, no, I said that when we were first talking about this. So
exactly. Yeah.
Getting some of our larger clients to pay their invoices, creating a situation where manufacturing is stretched incredibly thin, creating a trickle-down effect on our suppliers.
Yep. The shell game is real. It's so real. And I find that the larger labels are the worst like the worst offenders.
Mm-hmm.
They expect so much and expect you to hold things and wait and whatever. And I mean, you can build your whole entire year on these like 3 big releases, and then you're like, hey, it's January, where's these things? And they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this in summer. And I'm like, that's not January. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, and if you amplify that for a pressing plant, you know, that's an independent, you know, it's not like the majors just are like, oh yeah, you're an extension of us. I mean, sometimes they act like it, but the funding sure isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I mean that's exactly it. If you're not getting paid on time, like if you have a broken machine, you're down a quarter capacity and you have to get parts made, like where's that money coming from?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just like all of those things like gel together and make a bigger problem.
Right. And the last one goes kind of hand in hand with that, and that's getting the final shipping information. I find that a lot of times people are like, go, 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 go. I need them by this time. I need them immediately. And then
Yeah.
so you get them done, they're ready to go, and then they sit and they wait. And you're waiting for shipping. And you're like, well, so I think more and more people are starting to say, like, I need everything
Yeah.
to make your job workable, like your shipping, everything. And then we can press go, because otherwise, again, we're not warehouses. We don't have unlimited amounts of space.
Great. Yeah,
So
exactly.
if a pallet or two pallets are sitting there, that's taking up valuable real estate.
Absolutely. That means you can't get another skid of PVC in
Mhm.
because you don't have the warehouse room.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think all pressing plants of all sizes are seeing that. You know, it's not just small ones. I mean,
Yeah.
all
And
across the board.
that's why stuff gets damaged.
Mhm.
That's why they get warped. Like things, things happen because of environmental factors for sitting for so long. That's why you might get a record mark in your precious jacket because it's been sitting waiting to be shipped for 3 weeks.
So on the opposite side, there were some label frustrations with pressing plants, and it's interesting. I love doing things like this and seeing what people are
How
saying on
diametrically
either
opposed they
side.
are.
Yeah. So there's
You guys,
40
if we put you in a room and you guys just talked, everything would be fine.
Just be honest.
Yeah.
So
Here's a big foam bat. Get in there,
yeah.
have it out, and then you can have a conversation. It'll be
Yeah.
fine.
So 40% are saying that accurate information on turn times and overall communication is what's frustrating them. They feel
Yeah.
like that's overpromising and under-delivering. On in-hand states, they feel like they're a low priority with pressing plants that they've used because their run sizes are smaller.
Right.
And yeah, this is the one I was talking about because I really try to always cushion every date. So if
Yeah.
someone tells me that they want something at a certain time, I'm always buffering extra time.
Yeah.
And I'll build that into schedules. I keep people updated. So I feel like, yeah, that little bit of communication goes a long way.
Yeah. I agree. It always does.
Yeah. I'd rather give someone bad news and let them update a press schedule sooner than later. So,
But
25
in my opinion, like that's one of the things that the labels need to do. Like they really, if there's a way that they can change the way that they're doing communication that way and wait until they get records in hand to do things, it would insurmountably change the amount of stress down chain.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about all the time with bands and small labels waiting to announce things until the test pressing is approved, and I feel like that's across the board.
Absolutely.
Like everyone just wait, because if anything is wrong, we're back to square one. So,
And that's the thing. And I mean, and when you're asking a finite amount of people to do all of these impossible tasks, like all of the time, always, 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 there's always like, there's going to be problems.
Mhm.
So the amount, like being able to mitigate it by just being like, oh, we've got this really great secret, but also like, there's no harm in having the digital out before the physical release. I mean, for me now, especially with the advent of digital music, there's sometimes like that record is not that great.
yeah, and you're like, oh, glad I didn't buy it on vinyl. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I'm like, oh, I would much rather hear it cover to cover and then decide whether I want to buy it and be
Mhm.
like, this is a dense batch of jams. Woo! Can't wait to have it in my cool little raccoon hands. Or like, oh, I'm real glad that I didn't get that. Wow, they should have just put that out on a 7.
Yep.
Oh baby. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And I feel like that would eliminate a lot of the problems that collectors have, consumers have, labels have, and pressing plants have if they were just able to be like, digital's coming out this day. And then you know what? Records will come.
Yep.
If enough people think that records should be made, because like maybe that album is a flop. But you're just like forcing all these people to be like, oh my God, I can't wait for the record. Boo. And then what if it's awful?
Yeah. And those fans that really want it no matter what and just love the band because they want the whole collection are going to buy it anyway.
Exactly.
So,
And that's exactly it. And they'll buy it when it comes out.
Mhm.
And they'll buy all 6 variants or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So like, man, it's just like they talk about communication, but that's like one of the biggest communication fails right there.
Mhm.
Because if you can't get it in hand on that date, then you're mad, the artist's mad, everybody's mad because you've given them this date that may or may not be accurate to
And
jump from the jump.
right. And it's not just because I'm a crazy planner and OCD, but also I've never had a good experience rushing vinyl manufacturing
Of
ever.
course not. No.
Like full stop. Every single time I've had to try to rush something, it always is a loss on somebody's side monetarily and something goes wrong. So don't rush them, plan for them. Yeah. 25% are saying expense and cost increases, which we covered. 20% are saying time frame, which good news, looks like it's getting better. 5% are talking about the majors. They said trying to find a pressing plant is hard if we're a small label, not pressing Fleetwood Mac's rumors, pressing plants not taking on new customers because they are so backed up. And I'll just say to that, not all pressing plants work with majors. We do not work with majors at the pressing plant I work at. So
again, it's education and doing your homework.
Mhm.
It might be a little bit of pain, but you're going to have to talk to a few people or send out emails or something. But in order to get the answer that you want, you're going to have a conversation.
Yep.
You can't just blame it on Fleetwood Mac or Adele.
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault. Stop blaming artists for the label's handling of things.
Yep.
Adele didn't decide that she wanted to make 500,000 records. Come on.
So real quick, let's jump to real quick, I'll read the label wish list.
Yeah.
30% wish there were better quality records. 30% said more fun color options. 10% better customer service. 10% more interest in the labels and no cuts in line, which I don't do that.
Perspective, I guess, huh?
Yeah. 5% said send the covers and vinyl individually to avoid seam splits, which you can ask for. 5% 5% said discounts for returning customers. 5% want 7-inch records, which we know is a problem. And 5% said express orders for short run records. I think again,
that's directly opposite from no cutting in line. So can't have it both ways, pals.
Yeah, and 7-inch records is definitely something that's an issue. I mean, you have to change over a whole machine for it. You have to change the molds. And there's just not a lot of 7-inch work. And so, and it's the margins on it are so tight. So that's why a lot of pressing plants aren't doing it.
Even though I love them the most and they're my favorite to do, and I will do them all day, every day. So you know what? If you want 7-inch records, I'm your girl. Please let me have them.
Yeah.
I did 500 for the Arkells. I'll do 500 for you. I promise.
So due to the above, 58%, or due to what we just said, 58% have changed the way they release vinyl in the past 2 years, while the remainder have not. A lot are holding back releases. Some are delaying pre-orders, less different colored vinyl. They don't do them anymore at all because they got sick of making customers wait.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets vinyl. Some people don't do physical releases. So I mean, overall, that all makes sense. I mean, again, it goes hand in hand with what we said. So
well, exactly, and that's there's going to be pivots and responses in the way that pressing plant does things with adjusting their minimums and adjusting their formats, and then the labels are going to have to commensurately do things as well. So I mean, it's not just one section of the industry can't fix everything for everybody. It's got to be a little bit of give and take from every kind of part. So I think all of these totally make sense.
Yeah. And I would say to end on a positive note,
Yeah.
as far as vinyl's future, because the next episode, we're going to dive into everything that the labels and pressing plants want everyone to know.
Yes.
We're going to talk about opinions on lathe cuts, and we're going to dive into consumers' views on all of this. So to end today, though, from the label perspective, 86% say that their consumer base is still excited about the medium, which matches over 63% of what collectors are saying. 91% of labels say they will still order vinyl for their artists in the next 1 to 5 years.
Great. Love it.
Fantastic.
That means we still have jobs.
Yay!
In the next 1 to 5 years. Beyond that, who knows?
Oh, I'm so excited to dive into the rest of this.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, I feel like I was spicy enough for this episode.
Well, we'll leave it on a note from one of our label friends then. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your support. And thanks for still being into it. And we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the Women in Vinyl podcast. You can join our ever-growing list of sponsors. Other record labels: Selector, Couple Design, Eargasm, Groove Washer, Glowtronics, New Gen Audio, and Vinyl Revolution Record Show. And thanks for sponsoring the show. Hey, as always, you can join our conversation on Instagram or send us a note at media@womeninvinyl.com. Clock us. Send us info. If you have a question, we got the answer, or we'll find it. We won't lie to you. And check out womeninvinyl.com for past episodes, the store, the job board, and the library of resources. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us a review on your favorite podcast delivery method. You can also contribute to furthering our mission at patreon.com/womeninvinyl. Hey, guess what? This episode, 45 minutes. You know there was more. You want more? You get more. Go to patreon.com and you can get more. And you'll find all the B-sides, the deep cuts, and the amazing extras, including longer episodes, and contribute to the creation of scholarships and educational opportunities to further the demystification, the infiltration of more women and non-binary identifying humans into the vinyl making space, decreasing those turnaround times every week. Yeah, we love your records. We want you to love them too. womeninvinyl.com.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.